Jace asked me to do this thing on accessibility and area just at the last moment, actually yesterday. So I'll do a pre-prepared presentation that I gave a few days ago. So a few stats that I want to share. Just look at this. Oh, there are about 650 million people worldwide which are disabled. These are stats from the United Nations and the World Bank. Yes, around 7% of the Indian population is PWD, whereas people with disabilities. Right? Once again, it's a proper government organization which is saying this. So let's play a game. Right? I trust everyone over here has a cell phone. So everyone take out your cell phones. You have two. Okay, so the game is pretty simple, right? So what you need to do is, I'll just say out a number and you have to type it on your mobile phones, right? Catch number 1. Yes, there's more than one catch. So catch number 1, there's no speed typing, just do it with one hand. Right? That's what she said. So, no speed typing. Catch number 2, I'm not going to repeat this number. I'm just going to say it just as I do in normal conversation. Right? Catch number 3, you'll have to do all this with your eyes closed. Yes. Everyone, eyes closed. Everyone, eyes closed, right? So the number is 9878435184. That's not the point. So, did anyone come up with? Yeah, I'm on roaming, so I'll just pick it up and you'll. So, did anyone get this right? How many? Just curious. There's no prize in this, so. Okay, so not a whole lot actually got this right. This was just an exercise, a very, very small exercise to put you in the shoes of people who are blind, for example. Just small things, everyday things that they have to deal with, that people like us cannot understand or do not understand. Right? But browsing the web is one of those things, which we take for granted because we have sight, but there are many people who do not have sight, and for them, the browsing the web is very, very difficult. How do they do that? They use screen reader, as someone said, right? What's the screen reader about? It reads everything on the screen. I'm on roaming, so I'll pick it up. Anyways, so if you're using a screen reader, what's going to happen? It's going to say out everything on the screen. The problem is, if you're using something called, like for example, if you're using tables for layout, what will happen is it'll screw up the order in which each and everything is being pronounced, right? So the person who is blind will not know anything what's going on the web page because each and everything is the order of everything is, haywire, right? So that's one of the things that we as developers need to know. There are certain guidelines set by the W3C, right? It's called the WCAG guidelines, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, that you need to know about. There are certain guidelines which you need to follow as web developers, and in certain projects in certain countries, these are requirements. Right? For example, how many people have heard of Section 508? Right? It's a requirement. The Indian government has a bunch of guidelines for Indian websites as well. They've released just a year back, which say that preferably it has to be AA level, WCAG AA level. There are 3 levels in WCAG: A level, AA level, and AAA level. Right? It has to be at least AA level. Right? So there are various guidelines, especially if you're having a project with, say, a government website. Sometimes it's not just a requirement from the client side; it's a requirement by law to follow these things. Right? So making sure that our web content is accessible and usable for people with disabilities is very, very important. Especially because we in India ourselves have the largest blind population on earth. No one has as many blind people as India does. So it's especially our jobs as Indian web developers to make sure our content is accessible. So when we're talking about, we have 12 million blind people. So I'm going to skip the WCAG guidelines right now because we don't have time. I'm going to go straight to area. Since we're talking about HTML5, right? So we're talking about all these rich internet applications, right? All these applications like Gmail or Facebook, which are very, very JS heavy, right? And there's a whole lot of dynamic script injection which is happening, right? I trust people know what's the difference between normal source and generated source, right? So if you insert something, insert a piece of HTML using JavaScript, right? That's part of the generated source code. A screen reader will not be able to make sense of this, right? Anything which is not part of the original source code will not be accessible to a screen reader. So what do you do if you're actually doing stuff like Ajax, in which part of the page has updated? A screen for us, if a part of the web page is updated, the notification is visual. We can see that, okay, part of the web page is updated. But for a screen reader, it's very, very difficult, right? So ARIA actually is a way to address these issues. ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications, right? And it's very, very simple. It's not really that difficult. Yahoo is actually doing some work on ARIA as well, I trust. So, for example, if you're using like a slider script, right, a slider which in a form, you know what's the current value, but how does a screen reader know? Right? So that's a major usability issue for people with disabilities. So the first thing we'll discuss is something called document landmark roles. Right? It's nothing. You just have a bunch of roles, just like you have semantic markup. But the thing is, semantic markup that we were talking about was about HTML5. ARIA is much more than just about HTML5. Right? ARIA is also about HTML4, HTML3, whatever. Right? It's not just about HTML5. So over there, what you can do is, you can say that, okay, if something is in, for example, a navigation, right? And you don't have div ID is equal to nav, right? What do you do? In that case, you say div ID is equal to something, role is equal to nav, right? So there's a role attribute now, which is supposed to describe what the role is of that particular element to the screen reader, right? So you have all these different kind of roles. You do it by this, div role is equal to banner. So the screen reader knows now that it's a banner. Div role is equal to navigation, div role is equal to main. So you have all these all these document landmark roles. So the screen reader knows what's the role of this particular element, and the blind person can now make sense of what the page is all about, or what that particular content is all about, right? Then you have certain things in web forms, for example, which are states and properties, right? What's the maximum or minimum value? Like, for example, if you have a small web form, right? You say that, okay, the maximum should be this, or minimum should be this, right? You can read it, or you can say whatever you want. But for a screen reader, it's a little bit difficult. So if you have a slider, for example, then you can say, input type is equal to image and this and that. Role is equal to slider, so it knows it's a slider. Area value min is equal to 0. Area value max is equal to 100, and that's it. And the screen and automatically there's every time you slide the slider, there's a value now type of event fired. So the screen reader knows, okay, what's the value right now, right? Yeah, it can read it out in real time.
Are these attributes supported by W3C or W3C?
Yes. So ARIA is actually made by the Web Accessibility Initiative. That's a subgroup of the W3C. So
if I pass my document as a valid XHP from 1.0,
this is not part of HTML4, so it will break the validation in that case, the automatic validation, right? But HTML5 will support ARIA, right? No, you can use this in HTML4 as well. It's just that it will not validate, right? Because of these things. But if you use these things in HTML5, then it will validate.
Make sense out of this without document details, right?
Yeah. Then you have something called live regions, right? So if a particular region, a particular page, part of the page has updated, right, using Ajax or whatever, then how to notify the user that, okay, this thing has changed, right? So this is why you use live regions. So there's a property called ARIA Live, right? It has 3 verbosity levels. For example, if you're using a chat application, right, and a new message has popped up, what do? If you use ARIA Live off, then no notification will be provided, right? If you use area live polite, then what will happen is it'll wait for the particular user to complete his current task, whatever it is, then it will display the notification that okay, something has changed, right? And area assertive is it'll barge in and say whatever you're doing, it will not wait for you to complete your task. It'll right there itself say that okay, something has changed in this part of the page, right? So these are the three verbosity levels of area. So for example, if you have this, you have an unordered list, and if any li, any list element is changed inside this UL, right? Then what will happen with area live off? Nothing will be announced. With area live polite, it'll wait for the screen reader to say out what it's saying, then it will announce the change. And area live assertive, anything which is changed, it'll announce it straight away, right? Yeah.
So if I'm dynamically inserting this stuff with JavaScript, that still work?
Yes, that's the whole point. So if you're dynamically inserting something with JavaScript, it will say, depending on the verbosity level, how, what part of the page has been updated. That's the whole point of ARIA. So it's supposed to work with browsers and screen readers with this.
Why does it even need these tags? I mean, see, if it is really, screen readers are actually monitoring the page DOM being updated, why do I even need things like that? The DOM is standardized, the screen reader could then standardize on the DOM and say these things in the DOM change.
It's not as simple as that, because if the whole page is updated, right? If it depends on which particular part of the page is updated. Over here in area live, you can specify, okay, if only this part or if only this UL is updated, then provide a notification, right? You can provide notification levels. You can provide various cases of, suppose if something is only added and not removed, then have this kind of notification. So there's much more fine-grained control of what and how the notification is being done, right? Which you do not have in a normal screen reader.
Do you know of any live websites successfully
right now, I think Yahoo Mail is doing something in area. I think they have some kind of area support. Yahoo Mail. I think Yahoo Mail Classic at least, it has support for area.
UI sort of has a area support.
Yeah. So Yahoo is doing a whole lot of good work. In Mail, I think they are doing a whole lot. You have to check with the Mail team, but I think Yahoo Mail is doing some good work on area. Then you have a certain property called area atomic, right? So before the atom was split, the word atomic actually meant an indivisible unit, right? One particular unit which cannot be broken up, right? So atomic actually meant that at that time, right? So atomic in this sense means the English definition, not the the scientific one. So over here, what you do is, if you say area atomic is equal to true, then even if one thing is changed, for example, even if banana is removed over here in this thing, all of the list elements will be announced once again, right? So that's the whole meaning of area atomic. And if you use area atomic is equal to true, then if any change is happening within those sub-elements, all of those things will be announced, right? If you do area atomic is equal to false, then only that particular thing will be announced. Yes. Then you have area relevant, which is the last one. Area relevant is about, hello? Yeah. So it's about, for example, if you want to make a change and you say that okay, I want to announce a change only if something is added, or I want to announce a change only if something is deleted. I want to announce a change only if text is changed and not images. What do I do? Then you can have area atomic, area relevant. So you have these things, additions, removals, text, all, right? So let's take this example, for example. You have area relevant is equal to additions, area atomic is equal to true, area live is equal to polite. What will happen is, since this area relevant is equal to additions, if you're using JavaScript, you add an li element, like a banana, for example, then all of these things will be announced in a polite manner, right? Because area live is equal to polite, right? So you got what area relevant is equal to additions or area relevant is equal to text is all about, right? It's about if only additions are happening, then supply a notification, or if area relevant is equal to text, then only if a text is changed, then provide a notification, not images, for example, right? So ARIA in general provides a much more fine-grained control over what is announced using dynamic JavaScript injection, right, inside of a web page to screen readers, right? This is very, very new technology, right? Even though work has been done for a long time, it's only now that major web companies are starting to adopt it, like Yahoo Mail, right? The Indian government is also doing some work on their own official websites now, right? Using these document landmark roles and all these area relevant, area atomic things, right? So it's nice to know about these things, and it's nice to incorporate. It doesn't cost you anything really. It's very, very simple to learn. You just go ahead and go to where your best practices. This is the URL, and over there you'll get to know what are the best practices, what are the best tags to or attributes to actually learn. Right? It's very, very simple. Yeah. What should be done in what regard?
So there are many practices in terms of, say, when you do visual design. So the behavior that you put into your page has, there has been research done, or say Nielsen Norman has done some kind of research, and they say that this should be done.
Yes.
Or, in some way.
The thing that I skipped, that I talked about briefly, was the WCAG guidelines, right? These are specifically guidelines for people with not just visual disabilities, but also people with cognitive difficulties, people with motor skill disabilities, people with all kinds of disabilities, hearing disabilities. All these are coded into a best practices document. It's called the WCAG 2.0. Right? So this is already being done by the
those would be guidelines as to what
how to do web content for different kinds of disabilities.
Okay, so
these are best practices. These are not additional new tags or something. These are just things that you need to know.
From a user experience point of view, from their point of view.
Yeah, from the point of view of people with disabilities. Like for example, if you don't have all attributes on your images, right? For a person who is not blind, it doesn't really make any difference, right? But for a screen reader, it doesn't make any kind of sense, because now it doesn't have any kind of text for that image. So it doesn't have any kind of way to make sure what the image is all about. Right? So these are the kind of best practices that are included inside the WCAG documents.
For example, just to make it clearer, like you were saying that the politeness level or the verbosity level can be defined in various ways.
Mm-hmm.
So which particular way is most popular or most presents the most?
That kind of study hasn't been done. So you're free to, if you have the time, you can do that study.
Okay,
That kind of study that's all up to you. What you think should be done. It depends on case to case. Right? If you're doing a chat application, one person might think that every time a new message pops up, display the notification immediately. Some other developer might say that, okay, I want to wait for the person to finish what he's doing and then announce the change. It's totally up to you. Right? Yeah.
If you are developing a website using Google Web Tools GWT, initially the DOM contains nothing, and everything is populated after using the JavaScript, right? So when you have things like this, don't you think it will take too long to stop? I mean, at the starting itself it will take too long, right? And if you give for a particular tag, if you give something like make it atomic and addition, and you make it polite or whatever, assertive or whatever, then don't you think initially it will have to be only 10, there are 10 items in the list. But since you have made it atomic, every time the new item is added, it will be re-repeating.
Yes.
So if you have a list of 50 or 100, I mean, it becomes cumulative and takes too long.
In that case, you use area atomic is equal to false. In that case, only that particular thing will be false.
Initially we want it to be false, but once it's completely done, later if there are any more additions, then we want it to be...
I didn't get the last part.
There are 100 items in the list.
Yeah.
So initially it should be false, so that it will read only once. But finally, if there are any more additions later through other script, then it has to be atomic and has to read out the whole thing. So is there
That's
any
a very
option?
difficult use case. I'm not really sure what to do in that case.
Yeah, okay. This scenario
That's
is
a very
when you're
good
using GWT.
Yeah, GWT, I mean, in general is completely inaccessible. Right?
Okay.
So it really depends. Like, I have absolutely no clue.
One just afterthought. What I was thinking, like instead of having as an attribute, why don't people take it ahead and make it kind of CSS rule set?
Because no one will do that. I mean, we've tried this, but no one is, even convincing people to use these attributes is hard enough challenge. but it's the most simple thing that which can be done.
Because if you have an option, then people wouldn't make. If you don't have an option, I think maybe it will take accessibility that seriously.
It's more like a decision call made that people who are doing this group. Okay, we'll take a call, and they went with attributes. I had no say in this.
In some places, some of the regulators are taking it pretty seriously. Take for example, recently held the Melbourne cycling games. Some of the people filed a lawsuit against the organizers saying that their website wasn't accessible. So the organizers of that games had to completely redo their website to make it accessible.
Actually, not just continue.
There are some regions which mandate some of these things to be accessible, kind of things.
Business applications in Europe have a requirement of business apps deployed in Europe have a requirement of a certain set of standards, and if you're starting to deploy business apps in HTML5, for example, then those compliance becomes mandatory anyway.
Yeah, I mean there are various laws. For example, the ADA is one of the most well-known, American Disability Act, right? So, and there are equivalent acts in the UK, Australia, certain parts of Europe as well, Norway, Sweden, right? And recently, just a few days ago, I think, or a few weeks ago, I don't remember, President Obama actually signed a law which said that 3 years from now, not right now, but 3 years from now, starting from 3 years from now, all browsers, for example, will have to be accessible to the native screen reader inside a mobile web page, inside a mobile client, right? So even on mobiles, accessibility is of a great concern nowadays, right? So these are various laws which are being passed by various countries, and in India things are being done as well right now, right? So sometimes it's a legal requirement, and sometimes it's just ethically right to do so, to make content accessible to people with disabilities. And these are the ways in which you can do this properly without sacrificing all of the bling of HTML5, right? With ARIA you can do this. Thanks.
Can I, that would be about 1 billion. So the accessibility issues in India is quite challenging, and we are trying to form a group to look at these, and maybe after the day, after 5 o'clock, we'll try to meet cafe coffee
We
day.
are getting a room arranged at NSRCell.
Oh, okay.
So we will be having a discussion on accessibility after this event this evening, starting from 5 onwards. I think 5:30 onwards. It will be at NSRCell, is right down here, about 100 meters down, room number 6.
So this is a very interesting time because, like somebody asked about, what about Flash, right? So these are the things that HTML5 makes it much more tangible, right? It will kind of help us go into that level where we couldn't go before because Flash was a black box. Right? So hope to see some of you tonight, and maybe we will have a challenging outcome which might lead to a W3 recommendation kind of.